So today we have a case where you have an Ohio pastor who's just doing, as he says, his godly duty. Okay, maybe like, oh man, here's the scam. I already heard about that other pastor. No. This guy is like, you know what? It's freezing temperatures outside. I have a church. Let me welcome in some homeless people so that they could sleep here, so they don't have to be outside in this bitter cold or any of that. You can get some food. Boom, 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 boom. You're good to go. Okay, this is going to be a temporary thing, but I don't want you out there in those conditions. Y'all tell me why the state is like, yeah, you can't do that. We're going to fine you and, we're going to try to just mess with you. Okay, y'all, this guy went through a lot. Okay, we're going to get into it. But before we do so, do not forget to leave a comment down below. Also, like, subscribe, and hit the thanks. Now, let's get into it. Ohio pastor charged for housing the homeless in his church sues the city in federal lawsuit. Oh, yes. An Ohio pastor who was charged with zoning violations for housing people experiencing homelessness has filed a federal lawsuit against the city of Bryan and its officials. Yes. Pastor Chris Avell decided to keep the doors of his church, called Dad's Place, open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, honey, to reach out to the city's most, quote unquote, vulnerable. Obviously, you're homeless people. Bryan is a small city of about 8,600 people, 65 miles west of Toledo. All right. This is one thing, like, I thought pastors supposed to do. In December, Avell was hit with 18 zoning violations by the city, which claimed he had violated a city ordinance that states residents can't stay on the first floor of that property. So would it have been okay if he were to have been on, let's say, the second floor or the third floor? Or then would you have been like, okay, but we got to give you some more violations because, I mean, yeah, they could stay on the second, but I mean, we got to give you some more violations. And if you look at the image of this place, doesn't appear to be second, third, fourth, or anything like that. Let's continue. Further, the local fire chief found a slew of fire code violations at the church. Avell pleaded not guilty to the charges at his January 11th arraignment, according to online court documents. So because his church is on the first floor, along with many homes, apartments, townhomes, condos, etc., he was not allowed to assist the homeless people. Well, where were they going to go? That's my question. Where were they going to go? You know, because if they're out on the street and it's freezing cold outside, I'm just going to make a wild guess. And I mean, I could be wrong. I'm going to assume they don't have anywhere else to go. Okay. So if they don't have anywhere else to go, and we know how we ain't going to get into the other stuff, but if they don't have anywhere else to go, where are they supposed to go? This guy opens up his church, Dad's Place, to allow the people who are less fortunate to stay. And y'all say, yeah, but I mean, come on. You can't do that. And it's like, I mean, I get you have certain rules that are in place. But at the end of the day, no one was going to help these people. Yeah, let's continue. Now he is suing the city, claiming discrimination on the basis of religion and claiming city officials have launched a harassment campaign against the church. Alex, harassment, y'all, these people, they just did not want to help the homeless, and they didn't want you to do it either. The city argues that Avell had been given time to comply with the ordinance after receiving warnings, but apparently he refused. That's what the city said. Avell's federal suit was filed against the city of Bryan, Mayor Carrie Schlade, Bryan Police Department Captain Jaime Mendez, Bryan's Planning and Zoning Administrator Andrew J. Watterson, and Bryan Fire Chief Doug Poole. Dad's Place has operated in the city for the past 5 years. but there was no issues at all. So let's say I moved the homeless people out, and I'm like, okay, you're still saying, yeah, zoning infraction, but you got this over here, you got this citation, you got this citation. But they've been there for 5 years. Why didn't y'all catch all this stuff before? You know what? Never mind. Let's continue. The church housed and fed those who needed a place to stay for months without incident, with an average of 8 people staying a night. So these people made it seem like, oh man, he got like 30 people up in here. He got 8 people. And it's probably Avell and his wife and maybe one additional person, but y'all not staying the night. You know what I mean? So for me, I'm just like, so? I mean, yeah, they made it seem like it was like 30 people up in here. You find out it's only 8 people staying the night. Let's continue. However, the city of Bryan offered a conflicting account, saying in a news release that the police department saw a spike in calls for service in May 2023 regarding quote unquote inappropriate activity at Dad's place, spanning criminal mischief, trespassing, overdose, larceny, harassment, disturbing the peace, and sexual assault. Now who lying? So Avell is saying only 8 people are there staying the night. Okay, not including, you know, him, whatever kind of staff was helping out before y'all could just stay. And they said there's no issues that were present. No issues happened. But apparently some mystery callers saying, so I got some questions. The police department is saying that they have had plenty of incidences, right? One thing I'm curious about, how can you be trespassing if you are allowed to be there? Who's trespassing? Because it said that we have a case of trespassing. They said we got criminal mischief, trespassing, overdose, larceny, harassment, disturbing the peace, and sexual assault. How can you be trespassing? Who is trespassing? Where are they trespassing? And how could you trespass if you're legally allowed, or you're allowed by them to be there and this is their property? Who was harassed? If I'm homeless and these people are giving me a home to be in, you know, temporarily for the most part. I mean, they said that they were doing it for months. And they're allowing you to stay here. You get food, shelter, blankets. I'm confused. Who's harassed? Who overdosed? And how do you know? That's also another thing. It said overdose. Who overdosed and how would you know? So I'm curious, was this an outsider that seen that homeless people were getting, you know, some assistance, some resources? Or was this somebody who was in the church and was just not being a Christian or a Catholic lady, whatever they believe here? Were you not being that, which is to help other people, you know? So I'm curious, how would you know who overdosed and who did it? Okay. Also, who's the caller? You know, like I said, who is it? What mischief was noticed or noted? I mean, what happened? You know, they don't say. They just mention, yeah, you know, we got this. But they don't say, because I got more of the article, but they don't mention, like, what were the examples? You know what I mean? You just say, well, yeah, he was harassing. Well, what did he do? I mean, he said hi to me. I'm confused, but let's continue. All right, I got some more questions. Who was assaulted and where are the arrest records for this particular incident? You said you got a slew of calls. Well, can I see some paper? If people are getting sexually harassed by the homeless, surely somebody's saying something. No, I don't. Okay, let's continue. Unless I missed something. Let's continue. The city became aware that Dad's place was housing people in November, the release said, noting that doing so was unlawful because housing people at the church violated a city ordinance that prohibits residential use on the first floor of any building within the C3 zoning district, which is where the church is located. On November 3rd, Bryan city officials issued Dad's place a cease and desist letter, giving it 10 days to stop operating for 24 hours a day. letter warned that failing to comply would result in criminal misdemeanor charges, which carry a penalty of $100 to $500, up to 6 months in jail, or both. The city said that in ordering Dad's Place to stop housing people, the city offered to assist in placing any person living or staying. Well, where was these services? Where were these services prior to this, so that these homeless people could have just went over there? Oh, y'all didn't have it. So are they actually going to be housing someone somewhere? Are you actually going to be able to move these people? Okay. Pastor Avell called Watterson to ask how the church could proceed with this ministry to the homeless, and Watterson said that they could seek a zoning variance or conditional use permit, quote unquote, this is what it said, but the city would deny such requests. You could do it, but we ain't gonna grant it for you. Who cares? Avell also allegedly reached out to Mayor Schlade multiple times, but never got a reply. The city said that after receiving the November notice, Avell requested a conditional use permit to allow continued residential use on the first floor and was informed that such was prohibited and could not be approved. Dad's Place refused to kick out those staying at the church, seeing it as directly contrary to its religious obligation. The complaint said, in turn, the city allegedly engaged in a campaign to, this is where harassment comes in, to harass, intimidate, and shut down Dad's Place. The city said in its release that a fire code inspection in November led to the discovery of 18 violations, several of which were serious and potentially endangered the lives and safety of those in the building, such as improper laundry facilities installation, inadequate or unsafe exit areas, and limited ventilation. Well, how come they've been there for 5 years? How come none of these were noted before? So it's only noted when they're helping out the homeless, but it's not noted any other time. Gotcha. After Avell was served with the charges, the city had repeatedly attempted to harass and intimidate the church by visiting the property under false pretenses and claiming congregants were, quote unquote, panhandling or using illicit drugs. Yeah, sure. Okay. They just said that you guys were harassing, and then you guys would just pop up out of nowhere. And then now you're claiming that they were panhandling and using drugs. Do you have video of that, city officials? Further, the city keeps changing the goalposts and solutions the church must complete to satisfy the city's fire codes, the filing said. In one case, the city ordered the church to install a hood over the stove in the kitchen. The church complied. Then the city demanded the church install a different hood and get an inspection from the state of Ohio before the city would be satisfied. Re-inspections for fire code violations in January found most of the violations were resolved, but as of January 16th, 5 have not been properly corrected, and Avell was cited for those, the city said. During that January 16th re-inspection, Poole found a gas leak during the same visit. Poole saw 20 people who had stayed overnight at the church, the city said in a statement. But they didn't say, they said 8 people have been staying, and now they're saying 20. Now these people are saying 20. The city is also allegedly threatening to charge the church's landlord if the landlord does not evict the church from the property.
During the city of Bryan was arraigned this morning for housing the homeless in his church. Pastor Chris Avell, he pleaded not guilty on 18 counts. Those charges included zoning violations for running a church that sheltered the homeless. The law states residential use in first-floor buildings in a business district is banned. The pastor tells WTOL 11 he was just doing his God-given duty.
You see, and that's the thing for me that I really think about, because I'm like, okay, fine. You can't, because of zoning infractions, fine. But where are they going to go? You know, the city goes and says, oh, well, I mean, we could house them and we can do this. But why weren't you doing it before? That means that you had no intentions on doing it and you were just okay with people being homeless and out on the streets. That's what you were okay with. You know, so now you have someone who's like, you know what? I'm not okay with this. I can't have this. I won't stand for this. And you're like, well, I mean, that's on you. You know, and it's like, how is that okay?
This is what the Word of God teaches, is to take care of the widow and orphan. And we have widows in our church, and we've had people who, they may not be kids under the law, but they're orphans. And this is how I worship my God. And I just want to be able to worship my God.
I feel so bad for this man, because you have these people who are trying to attack him for doing what he considers is his godly duty. Let me go and help the unfortunate. And you could see the heartbreak in his face. You can see it. You can see how upset this really makes him. He's not some guy that's out here trying to scam with the mega church and people out there, you know, having to deal with floods, and he closes his doors. He's not some guy who's over here trying to sell some crypto. He's literally trying to help the community out, help the homeless people out. He said there's 8 at a time, and you got city officials saying, no, I'm seeing people sell drugs and doing drugs out there and doing all this other stuff. Where's the proof of that? Since y'all saw it all, where's the proof of that? You know, and this man's just trying to do what's right. And then you guys are over here just being like, oh, well, you know, so have him be out on the street. What?
The pastor is expected back in court.
The suit alleges that the city's actions violate the church's rights under the First Amendment, the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment that forbids discrimination on the basis of religion, and the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, RLUIPA, which says the government may not impose land use regulation that imposes a substantial burden on religious exercise, which I get where he's coming from. These violations of the fire code noted by Bryan Fire Chief create a clear and immediate danger to occupants of Dad's Place, whether transient residents or merely visitors to the facility. Y'all, so let me know what you all think about this story down below.